Thank you for joining me on this episode of Conversations at Night. I am your host, Irene Sidere, and today we have Valerie Carmel. She is known as a personal growth therapist, an author, and she's a pioneer in the mental health industry as well. And she's here to share with us different ways that we can deal with doubt, fear, and anxiety, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic period that we're in. So stay tuned as she will be giving us some details on how to deal with those things and how we can overcome them as well. Valerie,
Hi, Irene.
how are you?
I'm doing great.
For those watching who don't know who you are, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Awesome. So, my name is Valerie Carmel. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, fancy word for a therapist, here in the state of Florida. And I also have a license in Nevada. And I have a private practice called Valerie Carmel Therapy, where I really focus on helping melanated women improve their overall mental wellness and what that means. So, that is in a nutshell, what I do. I'm also an author. I've written for different magazines and posts and things like that. I also do presentations for different organizations as well, all centered around mental wellness.
So, Valerie, right now we are in 2021 and we're in the midst of a pandemic. And with having a pandemic, there's so many things that happen to us emotionally, mentally, things such as anxiety, stress, fear. People have lost jobs. People don't know where they're going to get their next meal. Some people are just freaking out because this is a global pandemic. I mean, this disease is spreading around and nobody knows what exactly it is or how it's cured. What are some tips or tools or advice that you would give people who are going through that right now?
The first thing is to just be honest with yourself and what you're feeling. I think so many people, we judge our feelings and say, well, if I feel this, well, that's a bad thing. So I shouldn't, focus on that and try not to feel this thing that you're experiencing. But that doesn't help, right? Because what you feel is what you feel. Nobody has to co-sign. It's yours. Own it, right? Yeah. Even if it's a difficult emotion, it's important to recognize I am nervous. I am scared, right? And then you can move forward and figure out, okay, so what do I do with it? How can I utilize it to push me forward and guide the next decisions that I'm making, rather than see it as something detrimental and it causing me additional stress. So that would definitely be one of the tools I would really encourage people to use.
I do like that idea. And how do you think someone could adjust to the new change? Because things are not the way they used to be. So how can someone shift and make adjustments in their life right now?
Adjustment is hard for most people, right? Because we like what we like. We kind of like things to be the way that we expect them to be all the time. I mean, even if you have to, you're driving someplace and you got to take a detour and this is the normal route that you take, that's going to aggravate you to some extent, right? So, and that's a small little change compared to this global shifting of what it looks like in terms of a pandemic. And so I think the first thing is for everybody to give themselves a little bit of grace, right? Mm-hmm. We've never been in this situation before. Like, I don't know anybody who's been in the middle of a global pandemic multiple times in their life and kind of like, oh yeah, I got this. Right. Said no one, right? So give yourself a little bit of grace and be comfortable with the fact that, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but what do I have in my control? Right? What things can I do? Mm-hmm. And then recognize that also may change again. Life is full of changes, right? First, the kids were out of school. Now they're back in school. Then they could wear masks. And there was no mask. I mean, it's like every other day, you don't really know what the heck is actually going to happen. And so you really just kind of have to figure out what things make you the most comfortable. If that means you wearing a mask and keeping hand sanitizer on you at all times, even in the grocery store, then do that.
Mm-hmm.
Be realistic with what it is that makes you feel the most comfortable, and then be unapologetic about it.
Right.
Like, right? I mean, I think so many of us want to do certain things, but then we're worried. Well, I walked in a Walmart today, and I'm the only person wearing a mask. So, like, nobody's tackling you because you're wearing this mask in here, right? So, like, do your thing. If it makes you feel the most comfortable, do that. If you don't want to go into Walmart and you'd rather do, site pickup, then do that. Like, there's a reason why they offer the options that they have, right? You just got to figure out what works for you, be unapologetic about it, but then also recognize this at some point will likely change again. And then you'll just have to just reassess the situation and come up with a new plan.
Exactly. And I hate to put it this way, but in life, things are always going to change as well. Like one minute it's one thing and then it changes into something else. So you just have to adapt and adjust. And I like what you said about just being unapologetic about what it is that you're doing. I really love that. And Valerie, so I do know that you are a personal growth therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So please tell us what exactly that means and how someone can achieve personal growth in their life.
Oh, I love that question. Okay, so um, ultimately, personal growth is really just continuing to rediscover who you are, and then always making the next decision based off of where you're trying to go. It's an ongoing process. We have never, at no point in our lives, do we say, "Oh yeah, I'm all the way good. Like I don't need anything in my life to change. I'm perfect at everything." Right? No one. Maybe Kanye, but outside of him, the general population is like, "Yeah, I got some things I need to work on." Right? And so there's always going to be something that we can do better.
Please say that again. You said that personal growth is.
So personal growth is an ongoing process. It is never an area of your life where you put a period. There's always a comma, always a comma. There's always more and more of it.
I feel like I need to write that down because
yeah, we never get to that point where we're like, oh yeah, we're all the way good. I have no flaws. I have no weaknesses. I have no, biases. It just doesn't happen, right? And so personal growth is always about rediscovering who you are because we're constantly changing. Okay? Who we were at 7 is not who we are at 15.
yes.
Who we are at 15 is not who we are at 25. Who we are at 25 is not who we're going to be at, 45, 60. I mean, we're constantly growing in different areas. And so my focus when I'm working with clients is really helping them to recognize no matter what they're coming to me for, whether it's anxiety, whether it's dealing with past traumas, whether it's dealing with depression, your growth is part of the healing process. It's more than just, giving you a diagnosis and working through that. We're going to do that too, but ultimately that growth, when we're done with therapy, you're going to always have tools that you can continually use for the next phase of your life and beyond. So that's really kind of where the thought process of like this personal growth kind of therapist ultimately came about.
Yes. And how can someone achieve personal growth?
There's lots of different ways. But I do think at the very core is something that I call my 3 pillars of like mental wellness. And that is self-awareness, self-care, and then self-growth, right? So the more you know yourself and the more you're able to recognize, strengths that you have, weaknesses that you have, areas that you probably need to improve, the more that you can really understand yourself, the better you know how to make decisions that align with what it is that you really want, right? So you understand who you are, you're comfortable in who you are, but you also realize that you're also going to continually to grow and explore new things about yourself that maybe you didn't realize before. The next part of that is taking care of yourself. And while, yes, a mani-pedi and a massage is wonderful, right? But that's not the kind of self-care that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the daily things that we do to take care of ourselves. That means, our making sure we are sleeping well, right? Because if you don't sleep well, now you cranky and you're snapping at people, you're not going to be the nicest person, right? Making sure you're eating well, right? Right, me too. I'm not the nicest if I haven't slept well, right? And so same thing if you're not eating well, right? Like there's a reason why people get hangry, right? Because your blood sugar low and now you're snapping at people.
Yeah.
And then making sure that you are establishing the right boundaries, cultivating the right friendships and relationships. That is part of your self-care. Those are all of the things that help you to continue to function well in your life.
Right.
And then the growth part is a mixture of all of those things together and allowing you to figure out, okay, this is where I am, but this is where I want to be. So how can I put all these pieces together to help move me along in that direction?
So how can someone achieve personal growth when they're going through fear, anxiety, doubt, and especially women? Because I know that as a woman, a Black woman at that, there's so much that we have to deal with just on a daily basis. How can that be achieved when going through those things as well?
So again, I think the first thing is acknowledging it, right? Acknowledging what we feel. Because I think so many times we have been either trained in some ways, kind of like experiences or whatever the case may be, has really shown us that we are not allowed to kind of express ourselves. And so we tend to kind of keep a lot of things inside. And that's usually the first thing, is to acknowledge what you're actually feeling. Because you can't address what you don't acknowledge, right? If you keep your head buried in the sand, you're never going to have enough strength to look at it and say, I am anxious, or I am depressed, or I am dealing with self-doubt in this particular area. You have to acknowledge it. Once you do that, then you can say, okay, where is this coming from? What can I do about it? Who I got to talk to help me fix it? Does that mean I need to, get a therapist? Does that mean I need to get an accountability partner? Does that mean I need to be more mindful about, my faith practices? Whatever that is where you start to develop a plan to address it, right? And I think by doing that, you really start to be able to understand where these fears are coming from, where that doubt is coming from, why you feel what you feel. Because most people don't even know why they feel what they feel. They just feel it. Right? And so by really kind of asking yourself these questions and understanding where the emotion is coming from, then you can finally come up with a plan as to how to deal with it and how to change the way you see that thought process in your head. One of the things that is so funny to me is that we talk to ourselves all day long, and sometimes we don't even realize it. Right? And so we're constantly having all of these thoughts all the time. And oftentimes the thoughts that we have are not always the most positive ones. Right?
Yes.
And so, right, you have it all the time. Right? You're like, oh, I messed that up. Oh, I don't know why I did that. That was dumb. That was
just speaking negatively about yourself and to yourself. And we don't even realize. You
don't realize it until you're talking to, especially in therapy. I talk a lot to people about, I do give them homework assignments every session that allows them to become more and more in tune with the thoughts that are happening in their head. And then they realize I'm nicer to other people than I am to myself.
Wow.
Right? And so we go through that process and I help them to recognize your thought is an option. Just because you think it doesn't mean that it's true. So you can choose to believe it and incorporate it and integrate it into who you are, or you can choose to reject that thought. And I think people don't recognize that you have that power, you have that ability to take that thought under control and say, nah, I'm not going to listen to that thought. That's just my fear talking. That's just me getting in my own head, not going to listen to it, and I'm going to choose to go in this direction instead of that.
I love that. I love that because, like you said, a lot of people, I think they don't realize that what you said, that's their truth, that they're kinder to other people than they are to themselves. And they think that because, they're doing self-care, because self-care and self-love are very different to me. I don't know if
Absolutely.
you agree with that, but those are two different things that people tend to put together. And I feel like if people realize that they don't have to assimilate to the thoughts that they have, and that they have the control and the power to say, you know what, no, like you said, just distance yourself from your thoughts. It would take them so much further than they realize.
I have an activity that I almost kind of like an explanation that I give, and I'm like the queen of analogies. queen of analogies, because it really helps bring things into break very complicated, like a clinical thing, down to like the most basic understandable pieces that people can actually use, right? So all of us have a name, right? Mine is Valerie, yours is Irene.
Yes.
All of us learn that name because that is what was continually spoken to us in childhood.
Wow.
Right? So if you consider that is how your identity has been formed, that what we say to each other or what we hear being spoken to us becomes the basis of our identity. Something as simple as your name. Imagine all of the things you continue to say to yourself about yourself in your own head that now has also become part of your identity.
Oof. Ooh, just blowing my mind.
Like, it's a simple concept when I talk about like your name, right? That's how we all, if you have a child at home, that's how they know what their name is. You say it to them all the time. And eventually they recognize, oh, when you say Keisha, oh, that's me. That's me. You're talking to me. Especially if you have siblings at home, you know the difference between your mama calling you versus your brother or whoever, because you guys have different names.
Mm-hmm.
That it becomes part of you, of your identity. Elevate that to what you say to yourself. And so now, all the negative things that you say about yourself, you have taken it in as if it is part of your identity, but it doesn't have to be. It was you just chose to incorporate it, but you don't have to. You can reject that piece and say, no, that's not who I am.
I love that analogy. And I hope people are able to grab something from that, because that, like, you are giving us gems today. And let me ask you, for Black women, do you think that the strong Black woman trope has something to do with the way we experience fear, anxiety, and doubt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that sense of feeling like we always have to be strong is, unfortunately, in my perspective, the very thing that has caused us the most distress in our lives.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't allow you to be human.
Yes.
It forces you to hold on to an ideal that we are incapable of achieving.
Yes.
No one can be, quote unquote, strong all the time. And even that definition or that term is not even real, because what does strength actually look like? Am I strong because I never shed a tear? Because having tears isn't a sign of weakness or strength. It's just something that happens. Because people cry for lots of different reasons. Some people cry when they're angry. I'm an angry crier. Some people cry when, right, like, because I'm trying to like keep that part of me under control so I don't pop off. Like, so I'm an angry crier, right? So people cry when they're angry. Some people cry when they're sad. Some people cry when they're happy. Some people cry when they're nervous. Like, the tears in and of itself don't say anything. They're just tears, right? And so constantly holding ourselves to this ideal that is unattainable When you do that, then you always feel like you fall short. You're always going to feel like you are a failure from that standpoint. But the reality is you're grading yourself on a test that is impossible to pass. So so everybody's gonna fail.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Valerie, I'm so glad you're on this show.
Thank you, thank you.
So, is there a way that women, or specifically Black women, can create balance in their life?
Absolutely. Um, the number one thing, boundaries. Boundaries. We have a very, very hard time with establishing boundaries for lots of different reasons. We're worried people are not going to respect them, people are going to get their feelings hurt, people are going to feel some type of way, whatever, right? Um, but my thought process is like right now, okay, we're in a pandemic. Back in the day, like if you wanted to get into a particular club, right?
Yes.
Like you couldn't just go any which kind of way, right? So the nicer clubs or the VIP or whatever, like you would have to come dressed in a particular way, right? No tennis shoes, no jeans, no hats or whatever. Like you had to come prepared in order for you to be allowed into that space. If you could do that with a club, why would you not do that with your life? Why would you not set an expectation as to how you want people to come to you in order for them to gain access to the VIP section of your own personal space?
Right.
Right? So when people start to recognize that, no, like my space is a coveted space. I don't just let anybody become intimately close to me, whether that's family, whether that's friendships, whether that's romantic relationships. If you change your perspective and look at it like that, honey, you're gonna really start making boundaries with everybody. And then the good thing is that once you realize how great boundaries are, now you don't play with people no more. Yeah. Now you get to a point like you're like, no, I'm good. This is a boundary that I have, and this is my expectation. But again, if clubs could do it and charge you money to come in there for a few hours, and you still got to go home and go and you can't even stay, right? Like, why would you not do that with the personal spaces of your life? It's the same concept, just elevated to a different level.
And I will agree with that, because as a recovering people pleaser, when I learned to say the word no, I'm telling you, everything just changed, because people start respecting you more, and you also start protecting your own peace, I feel.
No is a complete sentence. I don't have to give you 37 minutes of a explanation as to why the answer is no, right? And you can say no without ever saying the word no. I'm like the queen of what? I'm the queen of that. I can tell you no in 97 different ways and you'll never hear the word no.
Yes.
I'm good at it. And so, but again, because I'm a recovering people pleaser, of always saying yes all the time, always saying yes, taking on too much. Now I'm burnt out and I'm not functioning at the best level because I'm not sleeping, I'm overworked, I am, frustrated. And now I'm resenting the very people that I'm trying to help, because I'm like, why do they keep giving me all the stuff to do?
Yes.
Well, that's because you didn't say no.
Exactly. It translates as anger and frustration, when it's actually it's not their fault, it's your fault, unfortunately. Yeah. I know that another tool that you like to provide women especially is journaling.
That's my jam.
Yes. So could you please talk about journaling, and especially your book, Evolve Your MVP. Please let us know the details on that.
Yeah. So I wrote Evolve Your MVP probably about 2 years ago now. And it really was just kind of a thought process of how I myself have been able to overcome a lot of the things that have happened in my life. I've gone through depression. I've gone through multiple miscarriages. miscarriages. I've gone through, the death of my father, like all of these major life things that have happened in my life. And all of it I've actually chronicled through writing in my journal. And I've been writing in journals since I was like 17. So I have every single journal that I have written in since the age of 17, I still have to this day.
Wow.
And so my book actually, I've pulled certain journal entries that I have written throughout those times and incorporated it into the book as a way to kind of demonstrate how to utilize writing as a means of self-reflection. The more you can look into yourself and begin to understand your thought process and why you do what you do, why you feel what you feel, and where it comes from, the more aware you become of which thoughts are rooted in fact and which thoughts are rooted in fear. Because just because you have a thought, like I said, doesn't mean that it's true. And so you got to start learning how to qualify that particular thought. Is it coming from fact? Is it coming from fear? Is it coming from, worry? Where is it coming from? And that book has been able to really kind of go through the steps in which a person can utilize reflective journaling as a means for, growth. And it's something that you can always do without a therapist, without anybody, from now until whenever, as a way to continually kind of manage your stress, understand who you are, process your feelings, and really figure out how to, move forward and grow personally.
So what is the importance of journaling? Because I know there's someone who's probably watching this and is like, I don't have time to be writing down my feelings, or it's not going to do anything. What exactly is the importance of doing it? And why would you encourage someone to practice that?
Absolutely. So the first thing is that the first homework assignment that every client I have gets, every single one, is you're going to track your mood for the next week or 2 weeks until I see you again. Okay. And for most of them, they're like, okay, like what else, right? But what happens, right? They're like, okay, but what happens when we meet again? And if they've done it, I can tell the difference. Because the automatic benefit of that is self-awareness.
Wow.
So many times we think and feel things, but we never stop to reflect on why we think and feel things.
Right.
Writing it down forces you to pay attention. And as you're writing it down and you write, okay, today, my anxiety level was like a 4. All right, it was a 4. Why was it a 4? I was worried about this situation at work, right? Even if all you wrote is 2 lines, what will happen is at the end of the week or the end of the 2 weeks until you see me again, you'll start to notice a pattern. You'll notice whether those things are happening consistently because of work. You'll notice whether or not it's happening at a particular time of the day or a particular location. You'll start to notice if it's happening when you're talking to a particular person. And you may not have noticed that until you did the assignment.
Right.
So that's the number one benefit of journaling, is self-awareness. It forces you to pay attention to what you're feeling and what you're thinking.
Yes. And I wanted to just share something that you had in your book. I'm just going to read it for the people watching. It does say the key is journaling for positive growth must be about trying to make sense of what is happening in your life and not about simply releasing the emotions.
Yeah.
So it is what is happening in your life. It's not just about releasing the emotions. So being aware of what it is that is happening and finding out why. And I love that because, like you said, people don't realize why it is they feel the way they do, or they don't put 2 and 2 together.
Mm-hmm.
Valerie, blowing my mind. And what do you think about self-care versus self-love?
I think culture would have us to say that they're the same thing, right? And that if I love myself, then I'm taking care of myself, right? So that means, and what that care looks like usually is more things related to relaxation or tangible things, right? So, I just went and got me, this brand new Gucci bag, and This is part of my self-care and whatever. So most people attribute that and connect those two things together. But the two are not necessarily synonymous. What a person may, what someone could attribute is self-care in terms of acts does not necessarily translate to love, right? So just because I'm buying myself expensive bags or taking trips or getting my hair done every week or getting my nails done every week doesn't necessarily equal to me loving myself. That could be all the very things that I'm doing to mask the fact that I don't love myself, and I'm trying to present that differently to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So the two aren't necessarily the same thing.
Right.
Self-care is more of a requirement than a reward, right? Most people feel like because I've done all these things, so now I'm going to engage in self-care because I've done X, Y, and Z. But it isn't a reward, it's a requirement. You have to take care of yourself to continue to function, right? You wouldn't keep getting into your car and never put gas in it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly.
Right? You wouldn't keep riding your car for weeks and weeks and months and years and never stop and get an oil change.
Right.
It would break down.
Right.
You'd be on the side of the road somewhere on I-4 looking crazy.
Exactly.
Right? That's what would happen. And so I think that is where many of us kind of get there are little differences, but they have big impacts. When you loving yourself is literally a state of mind. It's more than just an action. It is a state of mind that is the foundation of everything that you do. It is the state of mind that guides the kind of relationships you let into your life and the kind of relationships you choose to let go. It is a state of mind as to the job opportunities you take and the ones you say no to. It guides every decision that you make in your life because it is more than just an act. It is a state of mind. Self-care are more of a set of actions or behaviors that we do, whether that's setting boundaries, whether that's getting our nails done, whether that's whatever. But self-love is a state of mind, and so the two sound almost the same, but they're not necessarily the same.
Different, yeah. And I like to say self-care is more about maintenance, and self-love is the inner work that you have to do. So spot on. You are a therapist, but apart from being a therapist, you are also a Black woman. What are some of the challenges that you have had to face personally that you could share that could be able to help someone who's watching? Because I feel like people don't think therapists go through anything, and it's like you're human as well. So if you could share that with us.
Definitely human first, therapist second. I was a person way before I decided to become a therapist. So, but definitely, I think that many people will kind of look at you and think, well, if I have all the answers to help everybody else's problems, then surely my life must be completely set in order. Right. And that's not necessary.
Your life is perfect.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I would say probably midway through, actually even before the pandemic started, I started having panic attacks. Mm-hmm. And I have been very, very open about discussing what that looks like in terms of having panic attacks. And I did go through a period of time where I kind of wasn't sure whether or not I even wanted to have a private practice. My private practice happened after the panic attacks, not before. And that is actually what, I don't think had I started having panic attacks, would I have moved forward and actually had a private practice.
Wow.
Which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Because there was a moment in time when I had to come to terms with the fact that I have anxiety and I was not taking care of myself. Right. I wasn't. Mm-hmm. This was right after publishing my book. This was after a time when things looked great on paper, right? I had just finished publishing my book. I had gotten a promotion at work. I got all these different things. I had lots of great things on paper that look like, girl, your life is popping. And meanwhile, on the inside, like,
It's
I'm
completely different.
it's completely different. Like I wasn't sleeping at night, my hair was falling out. Like, um, I mean, I was at work one day and like started trembling
Wow.
and like all of a sudden had this like need to cry. Nothing was happening. I wasn't doing anything. I was literally trying to type and I could feel like this surge of like, I have to get out of here. Like I have to get out of here. And so I got up, went to my boss's office, sat down, and just burst into tears and cried for probably like 10, 15 minutes and couldn't stop.
Oh,
And couldn't even explain to her why I was crying.
right.
It just didn't make sense. And that's a hard thing to be faced with when you are a person who is so free, so well aware of who they are. And it's kind of it makes you very uncertain about what you're doing. Like,
Mhm.
should I even be the person trying to help other people? Like, I'm falling apart. Like, what do I look like trying to help somebody else get their life together?
Wow, yes.
Right. And a lot of it, I really started to second guess myself and second guess my gifts and second guess my talents and second guess my purpose. Um, but I had a friend of mine who, during having these conversations with her, was like, you're mad you're experiencing these things, but maybe these are the very things you need to know to be able to help somebody else.
Yes.
Because now you understand when somebody says what it feels like, you get it. And not just because you read it in a book, but because you felt it.
Because
And I never thought of it that way.
my friend usually says, are you going to take advice, for instance, from someone who is telling you how to eat healthy, but doesn't practice that on a regular basis? Or are you going to take it from someone who that's their daily lifestyle and they're telling you how to do it? Like,
Yeah.
who are you going to trust? Who are you going to believe more? And you now have that experience that you can relate to and be more aware of when you're trying to help someone else. And I think that's very important.
Yeah. So that has really helped me have a lot more one, compassion, right? But also a lot more of a mission to help other Black and brown women to understand, like, you don't have to let fear interfere with your life. You don't have to. It is a choice. Okay? And so you can choose to figure out better ways of managing it so that it doesn't derail your efforts of growing and doing the things that you really want to do. Like, I can absolutely run a business and still be dealing with anxiety. The two don't, one doesn't cancel the other one out.
Yes.
I just have to be mindful of how it affects me and knowing what I need to do to take care of it.
Wow. And Valerie, please talk to us about AAA.
Oh my gosh. So AAA is a 6-week program that I've created that I'm actually going to be relaunching in 2022. But it's but it's for alphas, achievers, and anxiety, because I have recognized that women who are bosses, like on the go, ambitious, also tend to have anxiety.
Yes.
It just shows up differently for us, right? It tends to be the thing that fuels you rather the thing that hinders you, right? So the reason why you can finish all of these different projects is because the anxiety of not meeting this goal, not performing the way that you're expected to, fuels you, right? And so while in some ways that's a healthy way of utilizing the anxiety, there are some not so healthy ways that it creeps up into our life. And sometimes we may not recognize it until something really kind of pushes it over the edge, like our cup overflows, and now we're like, wait a minute, how did I even get here?
Right.
So it's going to be more like a support group / educational group of helping women to have a better understanding of what anxiety is, how it shows up individually in each of their lives, and providing like a safe space of support for all the other women to really kind of be totally transparent and open about what that looks like for them, and really have a a little bit of camaraderie, and like a kind of like a girls kind of group, like all girls group of like people who can absolutely relate to you.
Yes.
So
And just to give you guys an idea of what Valerie has going on, I'm going to read another part of her book that I love. And what it says here is, and what I have come to realize is that anxiety itself is not the enemy. It isn't some boogeyman or demon that has to be exorcised from our life. It is a necessary part of our human evolution with the goal of self preservation. Ooh, listen, guys, you have to get this book. And if you're interested, you also have to sign up for her course that she's having. Join AAA. I'm telling you, Valerie's where it's at.
thank you.
And Valerie, was there anything else that you would love to share with us?
I probably just share where people can find me. By all means, you can definitely follow me on Instagram at the Valerie Carmel. My email is also a great way to kind of reach out to me if you're looking for a therapist, or just trying to reach out to me for any trainings and things like that you'd be really interested in. My email is info@valeriecarmel.com. The website is kind of currently under an overhaul that'll probably be completely done come November of this year. But yeah, and I'll probably start accepting new clients probably at the beginning of October, because right now I am full. But which is a good place to be, so I can't complain.
She has to offer. So
It's a great place to be. But I definitely will be opening up more slots. I'm going to be going full time into my private practice, so there'll definitely be more spaces.
awesome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I do today rather, pandemic is no longer night, even though it's night. I'm so glad you were able to join us. You've given us so many gems. I hope people are able to take something away from this. And I do hope people can reach out to you as well. Thank you for sharing your social media handles, where we can find you, and so forth.
Thanks so much, Irene. I really had a good time.